Mother-in-law.
Anybody needs it, just if you just go like this. Nobody at home will see. I'm live. How nice. Well, welcome everyone. It's 6:05 on Monday night, and you're listening to the 103rd installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour on www.hamiltonradio.net, Channel 2. I'm your host, Greg Rapport. I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Age Out Angels provides one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to survive. We try to help young people avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face if they don't have a proper safety net. And this program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G, William Saunders, Ruben Rodriguez, and all the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ruben is on the big board tonight. Robin is producing. So good to see both of you here, and thank you so much at home for tuning in. We've put together what I hope you will find to be an insightful and compelling view of the child welfare system and related issues that improve our communities. So get ready, because tonight on the Radio Hour, we're going to plunge headfirst into a discussion about the new Jim Crow with Patrick Hall and Mary Kokesh. Plus, Visitation Home is here. We have 4 representatives from Visitation Home, and they have the noble function of housing folks with developmental disorders. CEO and founder Denise Ryle is with us, along with Treasurer Michael Luthi is here, and Patty Peck, the secretary, and Kevin Tylis, director of community relations. They brought the whole crew just to entertain you. So stay with us for the whole hour tonight, and I promise you'll be just a little richer for having done so. And stay with Hamilton Radio all night long for a combination of great music and talk. Immediately after this program, this is a new show I just found out about tonight. Dr. Nace is on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon now. On Mondays? Right, Mondays at 1 in the afternoon. So if you want to argue with Dr. Nace, you have to do that at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Mondays. Did she do that so that fewer people could argue? You got to wonder. But now after me is Andrew Romanello with The Rome Show, and he is a sports coach, and so his show is all about sporting and stuff like that. And then at 9 o'clock, Troy Alexander is still here with his hour. Yes? Thursday night. Troy's moved to Thursday, so who's on at 9? And why am I fighting this out now?
You're on vacation.
I was on vacation. I was away for 3 weeks. God, I missed you guys. I missed you at home too. But I hope those of you at home heard some. We had fabulous shows while I was away, right?
Yeah.
We had a show all about the resilience of kids who suffer trauma, right? And we had the people from recovery. Right? Recovery centers. We had a lady who talked to us about addiction and her downfall into losing her family and all that stuff, and her comeback from that. They were some amazing shows while I was away.
Great.
But I'm glad to be back, because we're going to have an amazing show tonight. But first, I want everyone to take a moment, open a separate browser, and find us on Facebook. Go to my name, Greg Rapport. And please hit that share button, or better even yet, email everyone in your address book and tell them to go to hamiltonradio.net, Channel 2. Please tell everyone in your world what we're talking about tonight, because what you're going to hear here applies to every geographic region, especially where you live. And what we talk about here needs to be shared. Don't keep this private to yourself. We need you to help us share it. Tell your friends. There's a generation of youth out there being forgotten, and caring people like you and me and the people in the studio can't sit still while that happens. So while you're doing that, let me remind you that we're here almost every Monday from 6 to 7 p.m. with the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. Next week, November 25th, Minister Britton Thomas and Patricia Hall from Men for Hope will be here. And Sean Jackson from Rosemont Associates, who's working with a local nonprofit called Isles. And he'll be here to talk about this vision that the company has for redeveloping a huge, what used to be a warehouse in Trenton called the Mill One Project, and turning it into what's intended to be a shared space for nonprofits. To be able to proliferate. So that's kind of wonderful, and that's all coming up next week. So be sure to turn in every Monday at 6 p.m. for our unfiltered look at the child welfare system and other related community services. This is where you come to get the whole truth, and I promise what you will hear tonight cannot be found on the nightly news. And since we're live, you can write into us during the show in the comments field on Facebook. Or you could call into the show if you like, if you want to join the conversation. Be as much of the part of the show as you want to. I just wanted to start tonight with a couple of interesting profiles of aged-out foster youth collected by a lady named Sophia Rudin. In Rhode Island, every year, dozens of young people age out of foster care without a permanent connection to a family. And last year, congratulations, Rhode Island. The Department of Children and Families began allowing 18-year-olds to voluntarily remain in state care until the age of 21. One of the last states to do it, but hey, better late than never. And so Sophia did some interviewing of people who did age out of foster care. And a fellow named Michael says, growing up in foster care, you pretty much live in the notion that you can move at a moment's notice. You wake up not knowing where at the end of the day you're going to lay your head. Now, Michael was in foster care until he was about 8 years old. And then he was adopted for a short period of time. And then he went back into foster care around the age of 14. And then from there, he ended up aging out of the foster care system. And he says, I had moved that morning, and I went to a new school that afternoon. Like literally, I'd moved and gone my first day of school on the same day. And all my clothes were in a trash bag, and so they had a musty smell to them. And then kids, I remember saying, thinking I smelled funny. I was able to be identified right away as a foster kid by the way my clothes smelled. He goes on to say a lot of people view foster kids as lonely, as not having anyone in their corner, and sometimes that can be true. But we tend to build their own families, and now I'm going to editorialize a little bit on that, because what happens is that's true. They do tend to build their own families, but their own families consist of people who don't know more about life than they do. So the people that they actually grow up tending to trust might be lovely people, but they're just not that helpful when it's time to age out and navigate the system. But hey, Michael's story has a happy ending. He says, right now I'm working on my master's in social work. A lot of kids go from foster care into social work. And I'm hoping to focus on making things easier for people who are in my situation. Christian is another person who Sophia interviewed, was shifted around from foster home to foster home and eventually ended up in a group care facility by the age of 15. Christian says, I was constantly coming up against individuals who were working for the group home who didn't really know where I came from, and so I would get the quiet treatment from staff. The "you got me fired," I've been accused of that before. There was a time where, physical contact happened between me and a staff, and my arm was fractured because of it over something very, very minimal. And that went unnoticed, and on top of that, I was gaining weight, and the nutrition was terrible, and I was becoming more and more depressed, more and more hopeless. There were times where I didn't want to live anymore. Even though I was surrounded by so many youth in the group home, I still felt alone. And Christian goes on to say, and this is where it kind of gets really interesting, I'm probably one of the few LGBT members in my community to be of faith. That got me through some of the most difficult times in my life, just having this hope that it was always going to get better, that God had a plan for you. So faith for me was a huge thing, partly because faith never let me down like people did. Christian with an appropriate name. I was always that kid in the group home that was the big loudmouth advocate, And I think there were quite a few staff who just did not like me because I was always on top of them, making sure the job was done right. So I think I've always been an advocate, but I don't think I really discovered the true advocate in myself until I aged out. When I left care, I finally had that chance to have my voice heard. So we're talking about people who aged out of the foster care system and really didn't have a good set of skills, with which to do that. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in my final words tonight. Because there's a question that we ask ourselves all the time, which is, if you really need help, if you're in a situation where you really need help, why do so many foster children who age out reject that help out of hand? I mean, really make it hard for you to give them that help. And what can we do about that? Because, as adults, we know that there are certain things that they need that they don't know, right? And if they're their own worst enemy, what can we do to overcome that? So stick around for the end of the show. I'm going to talk about that in the last few minutes. Now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with all the wonderful guests in the studio tonight. I want you to hit that share button on Facebook right now, and don't go away. And we are back. Thanks so much for staying with us. A lot of people in the studio tonight from an organization called Visitation Home Incorporated. Denise Ryle, she's the CEO and founder. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Luthi is the treasurer of the organization. He knows where the money's buried.
Thank you, Greg.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Patty Peck is the secretary who needs a microphone. Hi, Patty. And Kevin Tyler is the person I met originally.
Yep. Thanks, Greg.
Director of Community Relations. And then on the other side, we have representatives from the campaign to end the new Jim Crow, right?
Right.
And that's Patrick Hall, who you may have seen on this show once before. We've talked about this before. And Mary Kokish. Mary, what's your role in the organization?
My role is that I created a project last year. I was a former English teacher, and I wanted to make my way into activism, and I didn't know exactly how I would do that. But Patrick gave me the old pep talk, there's something you can do. And I thought, as an English teacher, I had lots of contests come my way. They were trying to promulgate their way of thinking. And I thought, we need a spoken word, rap, poetry, essay contest to help people
Excellent.
Understand what social justice
That's
is and that they
wonderful.
can raise awareness.
Yeah. So we have an English teacher in our midst, so no pressure. There'll be no dangling participles tonight. Patrick,
voice.
I just want to go back over the new Jim Crow, just for people who didn't hear the first show or something like that, because Mary sent me a bunch of things to read, and so I did. and I mean, it was just so totally eye-opening the way that the sort of history of the new Jim Crow was traced back to 1933, to the New Deal, and it was the gentleman. His last name is Stevenson. Who wrote one of those articles? He's sort of one of the preeminent speakers.
Brian Stevenson.
Brian Stevenson, right. Yeah,
Just
I asked him
Mercy.
to come on the show, but we're not big enough yet. So there, Brian.
Next year.
Yeah.
But you do have a representative here. So what does that mean, the new Jim Crow?
Well, basically, when you look back at the Jim Crow era, there were laws that were put in place to sort of keep blacks under control, so to speak.
And what era, what years are we talking about there? The
well,
original Jim Crow, is
the
it
or-
post-Civil War?
Well, it would be post-Civil War, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. So during that time, there were actual laws called the Jim Crow laws that were put in place to keep blacks in a controlled environment or a controlled fashion. So when we talk about the new Jim Crow, the name has changed, but the circumstances are still the same, because the new Jim Crow is now mass incarceration. And again, there are laws that are put in place that continue to put blacks or keep blacks under control and in an environment. So
Right.
that's what the new Jim Crow stands for.
Okay, and also we should point out to everyone that the term Jim Crow, that's like not a person. That wasn't
Exactly.
a senator or somebody. That was Jim Crow was actually a sort of a mean little stereotypical name that they used, right, at that time to say black person. So right now the level of incarceration is just so skewed percentage-wise toward black people, and all people of color. Actually, I think it's not just black people. I think
Right.
it's just all people of color that the prisons are full with. And what we talk about here a lot is not just the fact that there are so many black folks in jail. It's that the effect that then ripples down,
Correct.
right, through the community and ultimately affects the children,
Right.
who we serve. And so what those children start to see is, first of all, that's somehow a way of life, right?
That's right.
So they get indoctrinated into that's what's being modeled for them, right? Not getting into college, being tough enough to get through jail is being modeled for them. Go ahead,
And I
Mary.
have a couple of statistics that are very stark.
Go for it.
And so I wanted to share
Yeah.
two of them with you. And according to a federal study in 2000, whites were 71.3% of crack cocaine users in America, yet comprised only 5.7% of those arrested for crack possession. Blacks, on the other hand, were only 17.7% of crack cocaine users, but comprised 84.2% of those arrested.
That's remarkable, and we're not saying that more white people should get arrested.
No.
We're saying that maybe some preventative treatments and other
definitely.
opportunities that might be available.
Yeah.
In communities of color would be something that would be a mitigating circumstance.
And,
Go ahead,
and
Mary.
one more quote, the racial composition of those in American prisons went from 79% white and 21% black in 1926 to 57% white, 42% black in 1981. And then in 1998, it was 27% white and 55% black. So
How about
just
that? Yeah,
keep
it's very
going.
telling.
Yeah.
It's very telling, and I'm sure the population wasn't that increased, commensurately to go along with that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in giving up, white preference. I'm interested in sharing it. That's what
Right.
that's what I think we should.
Right.
Everybody should have, that sort of thing. And so when I think of Visitation Home, in this light. I think of just basically the discriminatory practices that exist in this world. And here, Visitation Home is an organization that serves people with developmental disabilities. And do you think they get discriminated against in society as well? So, Denise, what made you want to? You're the founder, right?
Yes,
So, what made you want to start this organization? Is this a calling?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say so. I have a son who's severely autistic. When he was a young boy, he was very sick, and he had some very high temperatures, and doctors felt it was encephalitis-like situation in his brain, causing seizures, etc. And by 3.5, lost all his speech and became severely autistic. So when he was 10, I had a caseworker from the state, from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, come and visit me. I didn't even know he had a caseworker until he was
Right.
10.
Yeah.
And this gentleman asked me what I was going to do when my son was an adult. And I said, well, he would stay with me. And he said, well, what happens if he gets sick and die
Sure.
or get tired like I am now? And I said, well, that's a good question. I said, so what would the state do? And he said, well, you know, if there was an emergency situation, we would place him anywhere from the farthest northern tip of New Jersey to the farthest southern tip of New Jersey, and wherever there was an opening, we would just place him there. I said, oh my gosh, is that what happens?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he would die. He can't speak. He can't fend for himself. And he understands a lot, and he would have no family nearby. His sisters couldn't visit him.
Can he sign?
No. He has severe apraxia. He has a lot of severe
Okay.
problems. He needs 100% care.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what? Well, I said, can I start a home? And he kind of looked at me shocked, and he said, why don't you write a letter to the DDD and tell them what you'd like to do? And I said, well, you know, I worked in a church. I worked in a parish, and I saw the incredible generosity of people. You call upon people for a need, and they're there. And it amazed me. I mean, I was changed dramatically by working in that environment and seeing the generosity of the community. So I wrote a letter in the state, you know, and believe me, the state does incredible work for thousands of people. We only serve a few. So I just felt that because this gentleman that came to visit me said that the waiting list for housing is thousands and thousands and thousands of persons long. So the chances of my son ever being called for housing in his lifetime is next to none anyway.
kidding.
No. So they wrote me a letter and said that it was impossible for me to do it. And, you know, we are faith-based, and I am a woman of faith. And when I heard that word impossible, I thought, oh, no, nothing is impossible with God. And that's really what hit me. I mean, really, that's how it hit me. And I'm not like super up there, you know, holy roller. I'm a believer because I've experienced it firsthand, the faith, and I've experienced God. But anyway, so within 2 years, we opened our first home. We started to fundraise, and people were we had a little picnic behind St. Vincent de Paul Church in Yardville, and we raised $15,000 in 2 hours. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm quitting. I'm scared to death. I can't do this. And then I was told, no, you go back and you do this. So we raised money. We got grants through Mercer County, through HUD grants. And we purchased our first home. It was filled almost instantly. And we said, well, we need to buy another house. So the house next door to us, we acquired and filled that house. And then we built a third house in between. So in 2003, 2006, and 2013, we built these 3 homes. Now,
Are you listening to this out there? The people who
It
are
is
listening
miraculous,
to the show.
I'm telling
This
you.
is nobody starts by building a home. You understand? People they mentor for a while. You know, like 7, 8, 9 years later, they go, we finally got our home.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
starts
It's amazing.
with a home.
It is amazing, and they're all paid for. And Hamilton Township has been incredibly generous as well. And the first house was $400,000. The second house was $385,000, plus an $85,000 grant we got to refurbish it. Plus the wonderful students at TCNJ came and gutted it for us and helped.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing, the volunteerism that was
Yeah,
surrounded it as well. But the thing is that it's low-income housing. They're not typical group homes. Group homes are great for some, for many. But for the people that we serve, what our vision is to create a community environment, a family environment, because many people, as we know, all different walks of life are marginalized for certain reasons. Even families don't have it. They just can't provide the care. Maybe parents have passed away and they have a beloved relative, you know, a sibling that has Down syndrome, say, or autism, and they have their own families, they have their own jobs, they can't give them the care. And what oftentimes happens is that even when adult child is at home with relatives, sometimes they don't get the attention that they really are yearning for. So in our homes, what we do is we have meals together, family meals. We don't eat whenever you feel like it. We don't have televisions in our bedrooms. We have a main community room where they come together, and they don't care. They don't mind. They love it. And they live community better than I think you and I could. They're so honest and sincere.
Yeah, I hate to lump them,
No, I know,
as though
I know.
them were a whole,
But
like a whole
I
thing.
see this
But
population as
yeah.
being so incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, I'd have to say that sometimes it can be tough for someone who's developmentally disabled to get friendships.
Absolutely.
Especially
Yes,
among
exactly.
typicals, right?
Yep.
And so when they do get a friend, they really kind of value it, in a very, very sincere way. And also, I've noticed that a lot of folks who are developmentally disabled don't come with all the shtick, all
baggage.
Right.
well, all just all of the phoniness that
Absolutely.
that typicals might come with. So I mean, they're sincere. What you see is what you get.
Very real.
And and very real at doing that. So, but I just think that's absolutely incredible that you started with a home. You are fearless, aren't you?
I was. Now I woke up.
Then
Still
somebody
is,
rolled
yeah.
in, and then Michael had to.
That's it. And then we
Yeah.
had to, and I always said, I didn't want to start a business. I just want to start a home. I just wanted it to be a home, a place where people felt loved and cherished and welcomed and that they belonged.
but it turns
somewhere.
out it has to be treated like a business at some
And then it
level.
comes into the end, and then
Yeah.
we started 2 day programs as well.
Yeah, there's
So.
the reality of the business angle of it. So how's your organization sort of structured in that way? You have this like ridiculous task of trying to get the word out,
Exactly.
right, about this and risk backlash,
Exactly.
right? Because I think the Supreme Court said that racism is over a couple of years ago, right? So what are you doing?
That's right.
Well, it's really funny because we have a network of organizations and individuals that write bills and do all that stuff, right? And it just reminded me of a couple of years ago when Christie was in office. There was a bill put out about solitary confinement, which is really a strange situation because solitary confinement is one person inside of a really small box. They come out maybe once a day for an hour. And there's a whole bunch of things around in it, right? But when that bill passed everything and came to Christie's table, at the desk, he vetoed it and says, there is no solitary confinement because you know what they did? They put a second person in the small box. Now it's not solitary confinement anymore.
Right. Just two people.
But now you have 2 people really killing each other
right.
because you're in a small, terrible box. So things like that happen all the time in our world. No matter what we do or what happens, there's a way of putting a twist or putting a change to it that just says, what? No, we don't have this. Nope, everything's fine. And that's what we get. It's like pulling teeth trying to get information from a prison. Of course, most of them are privately owned.
Of course.
Which is the issue.
Yeah.
So those are the issues that we struggle with.
So you work on a legislative agenda.
Oh, absolutely. All across the board.
And
all across the
is this a national organization
It is.
with chapters sort of everywhere?
It is.
Who's the founder? Do you know? Was there
That's
one
a that's a
person who's
good
behind
question
it?
because it's not. They're all autonomous. But New York has the largest group, and they do quite a bit. But we work with so many different organizations, the ACLU and you name it, that everyone sort of works together on different projects. It depends on the state and the municipality of what's happening. So it's all sort of different, but all the same information.
Yeah. I was having this discussion with my kids a few weeks ago about the word woke, right? And so here, my research says that technically speaking, if you're white, you can't be woke. It's not part of the definition because being woke is to understand what it's like to live in a black person's skin. And so,
I don't agree with that.
now there's the more modern interpretation, which is to just recognize social injustice, in general. And that's the one that you
Exactly.
subscribe to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know quite a few whites who are completely woke, and their understanding of being woke is, wait a minute, I'm realizing that some of these opportunities I've gotten was because I'm white. Now, not to say that no one earns it, because you definitely have to earn opportunities. But some of these situations where, you start to think behind just yourself, well, wait a minute, did I get that job because I'm white? In the same way when you're black. There was affirmative action where people were saying, wait a minute, did I get that job because I'm black? So blacks are awoken just as well as whites. It's just different informations and different things that are happening. So I don't believe it. I think that whites can be woke just as well as blacks.
I always thought I got the job because I was pretty, but that's
You, you could have talked your way into it.
that's a whole other thing. So Michael, if you're the treasurer now, are you sort of faced with the real whole business angle of running? How many homes is it now? Three homes, and are you crazy? Why did you get into that?
Well, there's a reason why I got into it.
Go ahead.
My good friend, Father Stan Christen, the pastor of St. Vincent de Paul Parish, he and I went to Cardinal Doherty in Philadelphia together. And my granddaughter was born with severe Down syndrome in 2014. So he reached out to me and said, I think you should become part of the Visitation Home family. So with his direction and Denise's blessing, I joined the board. So no, I don't go crazy because it's a blessing. And we have some very, very good support people, specifically Bill Pirelli, that helps us tremendously. He's a CPA, gives us direction so that we're in compliance with all the financial aspects of the operation.
It is complex.
Yes, it is. It is very complex, but we're in very, very good shape financially from that aspect. Denise does a great job with the compliance end, and from the financial standpoint, we file our 990s every year, and we haven't had any issues.
I'm just thinking about it, like from the insurance point of view. Doesn't it like cost a fortune for the liability to run 3 homes with, you
And
know,
auto insurance, it's all through the roof.
you're
Yeah.
transporting as
Yeah,
well?
yeah.
Automobile insurance?
Yep.
Wow.
2-day programs that we cover them as well with insurance umbrellas.
Yeah, you have to be protected in that way, and so does your board for that matter. Your whole
We
board
have
has
that,
to be
you know.
protected in that way. So I mean, there's a whole lot of money just to
Yes.
open the door.
Yeah.
Are you going to get more homes?
Thinking about it. I don't. Thinking about it. There's so much need and there's so many people. But what I've been doing lately is meeting with different groups. There were 2 groups that wanted us to start additional homes in the Philadelphia area. But rather than doing that, I said, why don't you start your own? And so there's 2 organizations in Philadelphia now that are up and running. You know, they just follow our model. And then there's another group. I just spoke at with a group in Middletown, and there's a large group of families with children or relatives with developmental disabilities that they're looking at the same situation. What do we do? What do they do? What can we do for our precious loved ones when we're not here to care for them? And it's scary.
Yeah.
You know, so hopefully we're helping them, you know, get on the road to starting their own place there. So it's just nice to, you know, when the families surround it, then you know that there's going to be a little more, a little bit better care, perhaps. That we've heard lots and lots and lots of stories, and it's just when you have the families around, it's natural. It's a natural caring for your loved one there and for who's around them.
I can't help but wondering if there are some people out there who are listening right now who might really be taking this to heart, because at some point, if you have a child who has special needs, at some point you really do have to come to terms with the issue of what will happen when you're no longer there.
Right.
Because while you're there, everything's great.
Right.
You know, you're there, you got all the energy you need, right, to give. But then while you're not there, who's going to take care of that child? And I'm sure you're seeing a myriad of different disabilities.
Yes.
Right.
And again, we serve people that age out of the system at 21. So when 21 comes, families are actually, probably around 18, they're kind of guided through the schools to start looking, to start seeing day programs. And so there have been a lot of really nice programs that have sprung up over the past few years in the area, which is very nice to see. And we have one that's at St. Vincent de Paul Church. We've started that, I guess, probably around 2007, and gave free services for many years and we had no money to do it. We just we did it. There was a need, we did it. Yeah. And then now it all followed up with they have their budgets that the people with disabilities have a budget that they can purchase services. So it's nice to see. It's nice to be able to help families to, parents to be able to go to work and know that their loved one is happy and being attended to. So that's why we decided to break our day program, which it's not that big. We have about 40 people, 40 participants, but we decided to split the group so that there was more individualized care. It wasn't just like,
A big mass.
yeah. And it's really been a blessing. It's amazing. And then this beautiful, lovely Jewish family, we're a Catholic organization,
Yeah.
and this beautiful Jewish family purchased the building for us for $400,000.
Ah,
Isn't that amazing?
sweet, yeah.
Miraculous. Really
Yeah.
amazing. So, it's really been amazing to witness it all, because you see also the decency and goodness in people and in the community at large. You see how people support and they understand the need.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to hear all about Mary's essay contest.
Great.
Because we're doing things to promote awareness, so we're going to be right back. Please don't go away. Hit that share button on Facebook. Tell all your friends what we're talking about here. And we'll be back in 1 minute. Stay right where you are. Very nice, people. Thank you. And we are back. Before we go further, I do need to thank all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We thank you so very much for your generosity. If you have an employee giving fund or matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we would certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. Private message me on Facebook, or email to greg@ageoutangels.org. And I want to remind everyone that you can donate to Age Out Angels every time you make a purchase from Amazon. All you have to do is designate Age Out Angels to be your Amazon Smile designee, and a portion of your payment will go to Age Out Angels without it costing you 1 penny more. I can make it easy for you to designate Age Out Angels as your Amazon Smile recipient. All you have to do is contact me either via Facebook or greg@ageoutangels.org, and I can send you a link that will take you directly to our designation. Black Friday's coming up, and I'll bet Amazon Smile is also Visitation Home.
Yes.
Probably.
It is.
We can share.
It is.
Come on, Chris.
Yeah, we can share.
How about New Jim Crow? Do you guys have an Amazon Smile?
We do not.
You do not? Okay, so more for us. That's how I'm reading it. That's how. If you just joined us, my guests are Denise Ryle, Michael Luthi, Patty Peck, Kevin Tylis from Visitation Home, Inc., and Mary Kokish and Patrick Hall from the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow. So, all right, so Mary, you are trying to develop awareness.
Right.
And are you like a volunteer
Sure.
in this organization, right? Are you on the
She also
board
on the
or
board.
anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on
Okay.
the board
So you're a
also.
board member.
Right.
So you didn't like walk in one day and everybody
No,
said, "Who's
I
this?"
didn't.
Okay.
No, I met a great group of people, and
Yeah.
I wanted to be with them
I think
every
that's-
month
I agree with that 100%.
because they gave you hope where you were not feeling very hopeful.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do with this contest is to teach that working as an activist for social justice is as valid a calling, as valid a spiritual calling or any kind of call, and as valid as a service or ministry to others, just as financial giving is or developing homes. And so social justice, however, is a little bit different from other charitable giving. Instead of giving something away, you ask questions and you say, why is this person and so many others in such need? And how can we change the broken system that's complicit in creating their harsh living situation? So it's a systemic thing we could address, and it could help millions of people, or starting with a lot of people.
Sure.
And so I know in children's curriculum in the high school, they're without a lot about even the old Jim Crow, let alone the new Jim Crow. And so I offer a lot of articles for them to read or watch in a podcast.
Well, what do we see in the education system that relates to, the new Jim Crow, which is there's no tax dollars available because the ratables have left the city. So there's no tax dollars to fund the school, right, in the same way. So I see kids all the time aging out of high school. They get diplomas somehow. So there's an excess of paper, but they don't have the skills, you know? And
Yes.
now, when you taught, did you teach in an urban environment?
No, I taught right here at Steiner High School.
I'm sorry, I'm throwing you completely
Yeah,
off the game
Steiner
here,
High
but-
School, and so it was a lovely place, but I was an advisor for a group of kids who were black. And they came to me and said, we need to form a group because I think they were feeling the microaggressions that are out there. And they were just feeling underappreciated and undervalued.
Yeah.
And so we did so much to bring awareness, and we created posters throughout the school. We had trips to the only African American theater in New Jersey every year since it started.
Sure.
And kids got a great experience from that. And it was white, black, and everybody, and it was felt really great. So when you teach about social justice, you show that that's serving too, and that's giving, if that's the way you're called to do it. And they need this information to see there really is social injustice. It's not something somebody made up. And so if they look at some of these articles, that will empower them because they have their own stories, and we want to hear from them. We want our dialogue with other people to include young people, and it will really help us. And I have the first place winner from last year, if you'd like me to read that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So here's from
This is an essay.
This is a spoken word.
Okay.
And, it's an honor, and I'm not really worthy of reading this. I wish she could read it for us.
Yeah.
But this is a black girl.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And the title, it was just Advancing Justice. I'm going through changes. I'm going through changes, living in the phoenix stage from death to rebirth, from hating my reflection to embracing my natural beauty. But how am I to dwell on positivity when my heart has been ripped out? Apologizing for my actions as I've been too weak, but I don't care because I've been living through my worst fear and I need help. The truth is, this pain has been swallowing me up. School to prison pipeline, St. Mary stood up, explained, as the words left her privileged lips. I saw a recap of my life. The disproportionate tendency of minors and young adults from disadvantaged backgrounds to become incarcerated because of increasingly harsh school and municipal policies. Translate, Celoy babe, I love you. Stay with your mom. Daddy's going to be away for a while. Translate, toughen up. He's not coming back. His past finally caught up to him. Translate, I saw all my male figures in the family colors. I see Netflix making money on my family history. I saw hashtag orange is the new black when it was hashtag all my blacks who bent their backs in new orange. Translate, take my word or your national research results, but swallow the fact that the divide in this country is prominent. No need for Trump because you have been doing an effective job from belittling skin color to cultural practices from President Andrew Jackson. Translate, America's made up of 64% whites, 16% Hispanic, and 12% blacks. Whereas prison is made up of 33% blacks, 30% whites, and 23% Hispanics. Look deeper. National survey on drug use in health. 17 million whites compared to 4 million African Americans reported having used an illicit drug within the last month, according to the NAACP. Blacks are 3.6 times more likely to be incarcerated than whites, and that is because of the unjust systems that we live by. Translate, blacks in prison mean more workers for less money to build the desk you're sitting in. There are big companies that invest in jails as they get slave workers in 2018. Translate, you have taken my father, but you'll be damned to take another, because I am the turning point. Hashtag, I fight for the unfairly treated orange brother and sister.
Man, I got chills.
That's why we need these kids.
I got
And
chills.
they make a difference. They do.
Quickly, 1 minute. Tell me the contest this year and how people
So the
can enter it and
contest this
stuff.
year, they should go online.
Okay.
And they should go to the Greater Trenton Area Campaign to End the New Jim Crow. Trenton Area Campaign to End the New Jim Crow, and you'll find their website. On the website, you scroll down and you'll see all about the contest. And it also includes film. And there's a place that you just can connect to a link, and it gives you the form of the contest. And they just have to read a couple of the articles. That'll give them amazing information.
Yeah, those
And
articles are incredible.
And then they just share their own story with us.
Right.
And we had a big reception for them, and they came and read their pieces. And I had some people from my church, and a few were conservative people, but they were open enough to come and hear about mass incarceration. After this reception, I talked to one of these folks, and he said, with my job, it came up something about racial problem at work. He said, before I went to the reception, I would have just said, just disregarded it. But after what I heard from the kids and from the other adults, he said, I'm changed.
One at a time, huh?
I'm changed.
Yeah, you
So-
move people
so it
one
was
at
great.
a time. Right.
Great to hear from him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's Mary. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, on the Visitation Home side, I'm assuming that you see people with a wide variety of disabilities. I mean, are we talking physical disabilities, neurological ones, lead-based ones? I mean, and how do you sort of cope with the variety of needs in that context?
I mean, we see all different varieties of
Yeah.
disabilities, from cerebral palsy, from people being nonverbal. So we see a wide range.
So in our homes, we I just feel that a lot of different places will have homes that maybe serve people with the same disability, or I just feel that in a typical family, is everybody the same? Everybody's different. Some are stronger than others, some are weaker. So the strong help the weak, and it's beautiful to see how these incredible people that everybody doesn't think can do anything, how they rise when they are loved and when they are in a safe place, and they help each other. So we do have people who are weaker, and in our day programs, we do have separate classrooms, so to speak, where they'll learn different life skills, a little bit closer to their abilities. You know what I mean?
Appropriate to
Yeah, a little
their-
bit of
Yeah.
so that they can be successful.
Right. Now, Kevin, you're in charge of community relations.
I am.
So tell me exactly what that means, and
Sure. I mean, it's really just getting the word out about Visitation Home. We've never explored these avenues before, such as this, speaking with you on the radio. We've been kind of a little under the radar, which we like to be a little bit, but there are some avenues like this one, and building relationships throughout the community, such as with local police departments. Robbinsville Police Department's a big supporter of ours, such as Nottingham and Yorkville Fire Departments, and high school coaches have also come to our day programs to speak to our participants.
yeah, I suppose it's helpful to let everyone in the community just know what
Know
you're
about it.
doing, and then maybe they can help, maybe they don't, but at least they know.
Sure.
kind of what's going on there. Wonderful. We're going to take one more quick break, and I'll be back in 1 minute with some final words, so don't go away. We're going to talk about foster kids who don't want to be helped. Stay right where you are. And we are back. I did a piece at the front of the show that illustrates how frequently kids will age out of the foster care system and not necessarily be ready to navigate life. Now, most people who are outside of this industry imagine that if an adult reaches out to help a youth who is aging out of foster care, that help will be warmly received. And sometimes that happens. But we also have plenty of situations, especially in Age Out Angels, where the youth and the adult instantly bond and fall in love, but not all the time. There are times when a youth will simply not respond, not return calls or texts, make appointments to meet, not show up. When questions later, just toss it off, saying, "Oh, I had a headache." And you have to wonder, like, why would someone reject that kind of help? And Patrick and I were just talking about how sometimes in some communities it's stigmatized getting help, and that certainly is a reason. But I found that there are like almost categories of situations like that where people will reject their help. Lots of times it's because they don't believe they can trust the mentor. The mentor is a stranger. They've had many adult strangers let them down and ultimately abandon them over the years, and they figure they're going to preempt that. There are other reasons too, like lots of times kids don't think of themselves as being homeless when they're couch surfing, but technically couch surfing means you don't have a stable roof over your head and you're homeless. They make plans with friends. We'll get jobs walking dogs, and with 2 or 3 of us earning, we can afford a place. And this is where they don't know what they don't know. Like how to talk to social services or where the food banks are, or how to cook nutritious meals, or managing money to save for emergencies, making timely health care appointments, and there's so much more. Sometimes youth see their aging out as no longer having to live under the yoke of oppression. Their whole lives, strangers have been telling them what to do, and they're just full to the brim with help from adults. I see many youth who want to smoke tons of weed and don't want their mentor to see that, and so they disregard their mentor. After all, we make it clear that we can't be complicit in illegal activities, and I see kids also who want to get pregnant and believe it when the father says he'll stick around, which almost never happens. So there are all kinds of, these circumstances by which a youth would just say, no, I don't want help, even though they're their own worst enemy. And from where we sit, it's an interesting balance between letting those youth alone and what almost sometimes feels like stalking them, like you have to deploy a whole array of creative ways to let them know you're here and that you care and that you're in it for the long haul and earn the ability to help them. And a good mentor won't be someone who abandons a child at the first sign of trouble. A good mentor teaches their mentee how to navigate trouble and how to manage their lives. It's important for a mentor to be able to communicate with whoever might be available from the child's past in these situations. An old caseworker, and by old I don't mean age, an ex-caseworker, the caretaker at a previous foster home, maybe a biological family member, anyone who can shed some light on things like their favorite foods, maybe someone they can keep in touch with, and so we might call them up, leave a message on their phone. If I know you like Chinese food, hey, let's go get Chinese food, something that I know is going to tickle your fancy a little bit, so that we can start to open that door and enable the help to happen. And there's something else to consider. In their lives, they may have never had someone they can count on, and they simply don't know how. They don't know how to have that kind of relationship. They don't know the rules for how to let their mentor be their friend. So that's something that we work on continuously, and there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse than they do. And we thank you so much for tuning in. Maybe helping us spread the word. Again, we offer humble thanks to Hamilton Radio and to my most excellent guests, Denise Ryle, Michael Luthi, Patty Peck, Kevin Tyler, Mary Kokish, and Patrick Hall. Let's make a date to meet right back here next week, live November 25th for our 104th show. And that will be with Sean Jackson, who thought he was coming here tonight. Sorry, Sean. just outed you there, pal. And a bunch of other surprises. So, thanks to our engineer, Ruben. Music provided by Angel Fire. Our webmaster is Carmen Garcia Valera, and our social media specialist is Bailey Braverman. Until next week, let's make this week the best week ever. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.